We all go a little mad sometimes.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
They're here.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to a very seemingly romantic episode of the SLAB. We've got a fire lighting in the background.
Oh, it is the SLAB, isn't it?
Yeah. Shit, how do we start this off? Oh,
Welcome to the SLAB.
where we
Discuss. Oh no.
No.
No, it's not.
we need
Where
to
we
do these more
probe,
often. No.
Prod and postulate. Yeah,
Oh, it
that's
is.
it.
Yeah.
What we do?
I'm not a fucking prod. I tell you this every time.
And I like to postulate.
It's me chewing on a pickle and almost throwing up. So to kind of cap off kind of serial killer
Slash
psycho month.
psycho. And we say psycho in generalized terms, not just specific psycho terms. But it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure and not a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
It's a process as opposed to an amateur assess. So fucking
What the fuck is this? Okay, yeah. Let's get into it. So last week we spoke about American Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
The week prior to that we spoke about Psycho.
Psycho, yeah.
And then the week before that we I can't even remember
what did we do the first week?
that's a good question. Just go back into
Damn,
the
I should be well
Instagram. God
prepared.
damn. Ooh, I'm just seeing your background there. Did you know Willem Dafoe has been cast in Nosferatu?
I feel like that came out like ages ago though.
Oh no, it's only
It's
been
just been
confirmed
official.
today.
Okay.
Just so you know, we're more than obvious as to who he's playing.
I didn't like him as Count Orlok in Kiss of a Vampire.
Oh god,
though.
whatever.
No, I didn't like it. He wasn't creepy enough.
He was menacing though at times. I'll give him
That's
that.
fine. You know who else was menacing? Anakin in fucking episode 1. That doesn't mean shit though.
Jump off a lake.
Off a lake.
Jump off a lake. You know.
Now I don't know. See. I think the choice could have been somebody like a fucking. You know your man. your man with the head. Oh my god! Why the fuck can't I think of him?
Oh,
Fucking
we did Silence of the Lambs.
Baby
that's it.
Skarsgård.
Oh yeah. The guy who did Pennywise.
Yeah. Why the fuck can't I think of his name?
Yeah. Bill Skarsgård.
Bill Skarsgård.
Because it's so
There's a few of them.
Nordic.
Yeah, there's a few Skarsgårds, you know. But I feel like he might have been a better choice. I feel like Willem Dafoe is, dare I say, too obvious. Also, I feel like he's a little too old.
Well,
Like, I don't feel like Count Orlok is supposed to be, like, decrepit looking.
but he is meant to be meek and, you know. But then I suppose, yeah, I can see Bill doing it.
Yeah, I think Bill might have been,
yeah.
like, the big eyes and stuff. I think that's what was missing for me from Kiss of the Vampire was his eyes aren't, like, big enough. Exactly like the stairs.
Yeah.
Like, he played it too much like a normal guy, and it was like, get the fuck out of here. Like, Max Schreck is, like, genuinely creepy in that movie, but he's just a creepy-looking guy. Mm-hmm. So, Serial Killer Month.
Yeah.
You said, we did Silence of the Lambs at the top of the month.
Yeah, so we sort of did this thing where, how do I explain it? We sort of, like, we bounced around, obviously, with themes of, you know, this serial killer is this, and based off of that. And, like, now this was totally unintentionally, that, like, each of these three films were almost solely based off of Ed Gein.
Your brother.
And, exactly. We've already spoken at length of Ed Gein in our Psycho episode. If you want to go back in that and, you know, read through my lengthy anecdote, shall we say, about Ed Gein, by all means go in there. It's actually at the beginning of the episode, I think.
Yeah.
And but I tried to avoid Ed Gein with this because I feel like it's a very obvious one to go for.
I also feel like we kind of already said what we had to say. Like, over the span of 3 weeks, we kind of peppered in little anecdotes about him. Just because, like, obviously he came up, like, thematically.
He's the main inspiration for all three of these movies that
Yeah.
we actually did this month.
And we'll get to Texas Chainsaw, where we'll talk about him more as well.
Yeah, which was totally unintentional. It was.
Yeah.
It was totally unintentional. We did not go down that route thinking, oh, if it's serial killer month, let's stick with Ed Gein. It just happened to be the 3 movies that we picked, I guess.
Well, I think it's just because, like we said in the last couple of episodes, he was like the big kind of breakthrough for America to be like, oh shit, like these people do exist.
Yeah.
Like these people, like quote unquote monsters do exist, and they live next door to you, or they live in your town.
Yeah.
I was joking when I'm in town. I'm like, statistically, at least a couple of these people that I've walked past have killed somebody.
True.
You know, when you
True.
think about like the idea of somebody being in the army, or like whatever it is, or somebody in a car crash or something, it's like the idea that like people have ended life. It's like, it's way more prevalent than you think. But with Ed Gein, he was, like I said, a massive revelation for America and the world at large.
Yeah.
Just to be like, oh shit, people are twisted, bro.
It's true. I think like in the 50s, this sort of what was it like? I think I described it as like an Ozzie and Harriet type of deal, where it was the times of like Doris Day and all of these types of things, where America was very innocent. Exactly, like at nighttime, you can imagine all of the Americas, Americans left their front doors unlocked.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they left a false sense of security directly behind in the wake of Ed Gein, because he was he was the one who stopped who was the on the cover of Times magazine. He was the one at the time when pictures of the Holocaust survivors and Birkenau and Auschwitz and all of that were coming out at the time.
Yeah.
And photos, I mean, not the events, just like actual evidence of what was going on in the death camps.
Oh no, Auschwitz came out as gay, is what it was. Auschwitz, queer icon. Sorry, that's terrible.
Real good timing, because it's Yosh Shiloh. It's the Jewish Memorial Weekend of the Holocaust. Nice timing.
You know, I say that all the time.
No, but it was at that time, like, this was so horrific to Americans that something as provincial as Time magazine stopped its biggest stories, which was the evidence of Nazi war crimes at the time, to put out something about Ed Gein. So like, it was huge thing in America at the time. But we digress. He is something that is of the nightmare realm. He is pure, like, disgusting, gross evil, and shock value is abound when you hear the stories about him. But we, as I said, like, when I was doing my research, I tried to avoid Ed Gein at all costs, because I do feel like he's the obvious choice. Yeah. I know that we actually have one killer in common with our discussion. So break it down. Like, what are we going to do for this episode?
So today, I think, like, again, we were even saying on the podcast last week, we were going to have a little bit of a difficult time kind of narrowing this down. I think had we not spoken about Ed Gein so much, like, if we had gone with... about it. Exactly, if we had gone with Peeping Tom, or if we had gone with other alternatives, it just kind of... Excuse me, we're drinking beer, so I'm going to burp a little. It just so happened that we happened to go with 3 movies that have him as a through line. So I think, like, we could have focused an episode on him almost purely. But
yes, which I'm down to do. I think it's it's a good big episode to do.
Exactly, and like we kind of were looking at this as maybe like the first part of maybe an ongoing series for the SLAB. Like this might just be kind of part 1 of true crime. Yeah. But today we're gonna kind of have a deep dive into maybe the psychology of certain horror characters, look at it through that lens, maybe saving ourselves from a little bit of backlash because they're not real. And then also kind of looking at the concept of nature versus nurture, the idea that people are born evil versus people who are made evil. And then just kind of to preface, again, we're not doctors, we're not psychologists, we're not whatever, this is just our opinion, but also some things just are fact. We're going to go based on fact. Yes. But then when we get into movies, obviously it's going to be a little bit more opinion based, because sometimes... Subjective. Exactly. Sometimes people get categorized as just quote unquote crazy. But yeah, we're going to kind of try and break those down a little bit and, you know, put fucking Annie Wilkes in the chaise lounge of our We're gonna have
the boudoir.
Exactly. People are in session at the moment, you know.
I will also kind of bounce off of that, like as you were saying, like we're not psychologists, but we also want to make sure that we are also remaining respectful as well, because we realize obviously like the continuance of like bringing these people, shall we say, to light is also shining a light on the emotional turmoil that survivors and victims and all of that have dealt with. You know, so I always want to like say that as well, as like we don't want to
like demonize.
Yeah, we don't want to demonize, but we do want to make sure that while we are, you know, we're a lighthearted podcast. We're here to give you a laugh and all of that, but we do also want to stress that out of respect and all seriousness, we are going to ensure that we don't idolize or push above the heinous crimes above the victims and the people that were murdered.
Exactly. That's actually a thing I wanted to touch on as well, is the kind of weird, like you said, idolization of killers and stuff. And now look, I kind of fall into that category in a weird way, whereas like I would say that I'm obsessed with like the Manson case and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that, and like I listen to Charles Manson's music, but that's just because I like his music. Yeah. But like
you're separating the art from the person.
Exactly, you know. Hitler
Kanye.
also couldn't paint very well. I actually feel like that's a lie. I feel like people are just trying to be like, no, fuck you, you were evil. But,
yeah.
Probably bad timing considering the weekend. But,
again, I said that prefix, just saying.
But no, it's like I did have, or I do still kind of have imagery of stuff like that on my walls and stuff. And again, that's not me like worshipping Charles Manson or anything. It's just like, I think getting into like we said for our Silence of the Lambs episode, Hannibal Lecter would be an absolutely fascinating person to have a conversation with.
Yes.
You know, just because like it's such a different kind of mind. And
it's
like,
a well
exactly
that you can draw so much from.
And like we're not demonizing the condition. Do you know what I mean? It's like Patrick Bateman wasn't evil because he was a psychopath. He was evil because he was a psychopath that did evil things.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And oftentimes you find people, and like again, all these things are mental illnesses, you know? And oftentimes you find that people with mental illnesses like psychopathy or psychopathy and stuff like that are much more likely to be victimized themselves than to victimize people. And these people in movies and in real life are the very, very small minority, not the majority. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's very easy to kind of tar people with the same brush and just say like, oh, they're crazy. Yeah. You know, and it's like also some people just are evil, I think. You know, and not mentally ill. Some people just tick differently, you know. But again, we can get into that.
Just sort of bouncing off of that, I always had this one sentence that always stuck in my mind about like you know, genocidal maniacs or serial killers or this or that. The righteous man dreams of what the wicked man does. This is the basis of all like human morbid curiosity. We are how do I say, we have a disposition to be attracted to the darker nature of things. Yeah. And not because, like you said, we're not idolizing it, but it's something that fascinates the human mind.
And it's almost a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Like, it's been around forever, you know? People have always been into the more morbid side of things. We say with horror movies, the way we've gotten over our fears of scary movies is to watch them and watch them and watch them and watch them.
The macabre part of it.
Exactly. It's almost kind of making them small.
Yeah.
You know, versus it being like this spooky thing in the closet over there or whatever it is, you know, it's
you just want to bite the tongue of the clown and
but it is. It's exposure therapy, though, and people have always been into things like this. You know, it's the idea of like vigilante justice is you hear it a million times in even back as far as like fucking ancient Egypt and shit like that. People like kind of gathering around and doing what's right, but that ultimately is a morbid curiosity thing where it's like people want to see what's quote unquote wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that doesn't make you fucked up, you know. It's like, I feel like true crime and true crime fascination is kind of like on an upswing at the moment, but like it's always been innate in people to want to see the darkness in people, you know.
Well, speaking of people and wanting to see the darkness and things like that, I think that's sort of a good jumping off point, because I think the first thing we should really talk about is how society can mold a person into committing unspeakable acts, or whether like versus like whether they're born with the capacity to, you know, commit these unspeakable acts, you know. There's only a few exceptions in history, of course, where at least public record, shall we say, where the person has emboldened themselves and done such terrible things. And I think it's good to understand the psychology behind it, like, because you're mentioning that at the beginning, the psychology of serial killing. As a society, we like to think that we have psychopaths and serial killers all figured out in some way, and in some ways we have.
Yeah.
But just sort of, you did mention it earlier that psychopaths and serial killers are on two different end of a spectrum.
Like, they're not mutually exclusive.
No, you can be like, the thing is about a psychopath is you can be a psychopath and still be extremely well functioning in society. And the opposite can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
You can be a serial killer, but not be a psychopath. So they are not mutually exclusive.
No.
And I do know the first thing that, because I was reading over on a few things, and I know there's a list of 45 traits that were created to diagnose psychopathy that are still used by experts today. And those that meet 25 to 35 traits on the list are considered to be psychotic, or at least on the spectrum of psychosocial behavior. And these would be superficial charm, pathological lying, grandiosity, a lack of remorse, a capacity to want boredom, parasitic lifestyle, and an unwillingness to accept responsibility for one's actions. You have manipulation, unaware of others' emotional realities, and extremely self-centered as well. But
I'm
like,
sitting right here.
read. But there is that those sort of traits, and believe it or not, two in particular that met those that criteria was Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy. So that was a sort of what I'm drawing from, because my two selections, and I know actually one of them crosses over with yours, my one specifically just because he's very much in the media at the moment and under scrutiny by Netflix, was Jeffrey Dahmer.
Okay.
And my other one is the same. Actually, we have a same selection, which is Eileen Wuornos. Queer icons. But we do, I do think it's important to note the fact that just while on the topic of like Netflix and having a male serial killer or a female serial killer, all people are evil. Whether we decide to...
You're about to witness a real life murder.
The fuck? I will literally pull a knife on this cunt. I'll wait.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the window open because this room is so hot.
Yeah, with
this
that
fireplace,
real fireplace,
roaring fire. So I think we'll just talk over them. Blah 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 blah. Eileen Wuornos.
Yeah, it's just the kind of like
I'm being gay in here. Thank you.
It's just that I do want to say very strongly that all people can be evil.
Yeah.
No matter their sex, no matter their orientation, no matter how they identify, all people can be evil, whether it's just being an arsehole or being a murderer. It does not matter. You can be evil. And I am not judging someone based off of their sexual orientation as a serial killer. I'm just judging them as a serial killer.
And I think these two people in particular are
great examples.
Just because, like, again, it's the kind of thing, again, they touch on it in Silence of the Lambs, that transsexuals, but I believe, like, I'm going to kind of expand on that and just say queer people as a whole. Queer people as a whole.
Right on the whole. Preparation H does feel good on the whole.
But it's also great under the eyes. Depuffing.
I don't want
on the
to
ring
know.
finger and just tap that right under there.
Oh,
no,
the ring finger.
But
yeah,
I think
yeah.
like that, using an example of Ted Bundy and a John Wayne Gacy, I believe
Yes.
those are people who were born that way and who had no other option but to act upon their natural instincts, which again is it's weird because you don't want to say it's not their fault, but also it's like these people are suffering.
You sick bitch.
These people are suffering from a mental illness, and
Yes.
it's not necessary. Like, I would like to wonder whether Ted Bundy thought in his mind, "Oh, I'm gonna wake up and do some evil shit today," or was it just like the same way you have the same instinct to breathe and to eat or to have sex or to whatever it is? You know, these just happen to be what's going on in his mind. Versus somebody like an Eileen Wuornos or Jeffrey Dahmer. I think Eileen Wuornos is probably a better example because I think Jeffrey Dahmer also kind of had tendencies as a child.
Yes.
People use the nature versus nurture thing a lot with him, but I do believe he... Excuse me. Everybody shut the fuck up! I think Eileen Wuornos is a great example of if she had been born into a different environment or if she had a different life, none of her murders ever would have taken place. And I do believe her first murder, in particular, because as we know, she was a sex worker. Just if you didn't know, Eileen Wuornos kind of grew up kind of like, it's a very, very tragic story where she lived with her grandparents and she was molested by her grandfather and by her brothers and by people in her class, and she would perform sex acts for lunch money and stuff because she literally couldn't afford to eat. And then that just kind of became her life, and then she ended up being like just completely destitute, literally living on not even the streets, because she lived in, I believe it was Florida, just kind of in the middle of nowhere, and like kind of living in the woods and was kind of nomadic in a way. Charlize Theron, actually, if you haven't seen it, Monster is an excellent movie, even though it's a little different from... It's a little different from the truth, at least like visually, because like her girlfriend did not look like Christina Ricci.
I only saw. Did you see that? I only saw those videos. Like,
she said, "I want Christina
today.
Ricci to play me." Okay, okay.
That is, if I may say so.
That's some bullshit, bro. That's like with big.
Oh, come on, Justy. We don't
fine.
fucking need you.
There's no sound. But, like, that's like when Biggie Smalls' mom wanted Angela Bassett to play her, and it's like, I'm sure you do. You know? But, no, I think if you want to kind of see, like, kind of a good, accurate depiction, go and watch Monster. Just because, like, I feel like that...
2003, 4?
Yeah, like very early. I think that it portrays Eileen in the way that I see her, in that, like... I do think she is like a very, very tragic figure. I do have a lot of sympathy for her, and I do believe that her first murder was completely in self-defense. But I think in carrying that out, she might have maybe gotten maybe not in a taste for it. I think she maybe could kind of see how she could take advantage of these things, because she didn't murder people for the thrill of it. She murdered people to steal from them and to kind of quote unquote survive. Even though I'm not condoning that, I do feel like her upbringing and her life ultimately kind of absolutely like influenced the way her life went as she got older. So I think she's a great example of nurture versus nature. Yeah.
I do think like she began life like on the road as a hitchhiking prostitute in the Florida, like,
don't we all?
Highways, you know. But you know, Eileen Wuornos is definitely on the opposite end of that spectrum. She is nurtured into that role. She is not born that way. She was like, this is not a cut and like paste kind of obvious like case of like, this is how a serial killer, like, you know, A to B, you know, cookie cutter serial killer. But this is like a huge trait that often happens when it comes to psychopaths developing these murderous intents and things like that later on in years. As we know, when it comes to men and serial killing and things like that, when it comes to their actual intentions being acted out, they often don't do them until the beginning of their 30s. And Eileen Wuornos was sort of very similar when she got to this. I think she was about 27, 28 when she started doing it.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, like, obviously she suffered a huge amount of like sexual, physical and psychological abuse from like both her grandparents, like after obviously her mother like just up and left her, and her father committed suicide in jail for kidnapping and raping a minor. And then obviously by like 13, 14 she was raped herself.
Yeah.
And she was pregnant. And she'd left school, her grandfather kicked her out. So like there is a huge amount of evidence there to support the fact that she was not sort of coerced, she was forced into that life.
Yeah, like whether or not she killed anybody, like up until that point, it's like, Jesus Christ, can you blame her for fucking going crazy a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I feel like that's a word we're going to throw around a lot in this episode,
yeah.
Crazy, but like, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that is the wrong word to use, kind of, but I feel like she snapped, kind of. I don't feel like anybody could blame her, but then also, you do have to look at it in a way where it's like, there are plenty of people who have that kind of life, who don't end up killing people, you know? But I don't know, even, like, my heart, like, anytime I watch anything with Eileen Wuornos, it's like, my heart always, like, breaks for her, where I'm just like, this poor fucking woman, like, all she needed was, like, just a big old hug and, like, somebody to, like, help her out, you know? And, like, again, in Monster, you see a lot of the time, like, she's, like, almost there. Yeah. Like, she's almost on the up and up. There's, like, a couple of scenes in that movie where she goes for job interviews and stuff like that, and it's like, she still looks
she's
a little
trying.
bit... Exactly, and she still looks a little bit disheveled, and you can just see the, like, pure frustration on her face, where it's just like, I'm fucking trying my hardest, and, like, nobody's even giving me a chance. Yeah. You know, like, poor girl, but then, like, her trial and everything, where she's just like, like when she's getting sent away after she's been sentenced to death, it's like, you're gonna kill a raped woman, you know? It's like she's still maintaining that, like, she was the victim, and like, it's like, okay, if she had killed one or two men, I might have been able to go ahead with that, but I think it was like 7 or 8 or something.
7 men in the space of 12 months, and one of them,
she got caught because the last guy was an off duty or was a retired cop. But yeah, it's just it's like so sad, you know, with Eileen. And I think like comparing her to Dahmer is actually very good, not just because they're both queer or anything like that, just because I feel like Dahmer's case also, a lot of people have always said, well, look, he was a gay man in the 70s and 80s. But again, so were lots of people. Yeah. And lots of people were not treated worse than him and not murderers, and it didn't work out that way. But then I think, like, also we were talking about the show now, people feel like they're kind of celebrating or trying to humanize Dahmer, which again I don't always think is...
I don't agree with it at all.
Again, yeah, and I also don't feel like humanizing murderers is a bad thing. It's like, because these people are still people, you know, not to be like, oh, feel bad for them or anything, but it's like you're then otherwise kind of saying that like this isn't a human thing, that this isn't a human condition. I mean, it also isn't exclusive to humans, you know. It's like humans have just kind of become quote unquote civilized. Like, we decided not to murder because we invented things like God, or we invented things like law, or whatever. But it's like, one ape is absolutely not going to hesitate to kill another ape for territory or whatever it is. You know, I think we should all just totally kill Caesar.
Oh my god. Well, I do agree. I think, like, the fact that, now, I can also look at it from the point of view is, like, I could definitely tell you that first murder for Eileen Wuornos was absolutely self-defense.
She was about to die.
She was going to die.
It was her or him in that situation.
Yeah, and she pulled the gun, and she absolutely needed to do that. You know, But afterwards, you know, what was it? I think the judge was like, I could understand once, I could maybe understand twice, but after that, you're just going to have to justify that to me.
Yeah.
And Eileen was like, she paused. I was watching this today, and she had this little interview on death row, and she was like, I had selected that they were going to die.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You know, and I looked at that and I thought, like, not that I looked at it and I saw, like, oh, those are the eyes of the devil or anything like that.
She's
But
got those black eyes.
Yeah, and, like, there was, like, nothing behind them, you know?
Yeah.
Wasn't it in, it was in fucking American Psycho, where we were just like, you can look into...
Tom Cruise's eyes.
Tom Cruise's eyes.
Eileen Warner's actually based her whole persona off Tom Cruise. Or is it the other way around?
Oh, it's definitely the other way.
That's what I want to see. I want to see Tom Cruise in the next Eileen Wuornos autobiography. In the musical. Eileen Wuornos the musical.
But I definitely agree. I think there's a certain sense to that like it's dead behind the eyes.
Yeah.
You know? But
You know, she was actually adopted.
Oh, she
in
was.
prison,
That was
yeah.
actually something that I actually felt was... Because you did say it earlier that, like, all she would need is, like, the hug and know that she's loved and all of this.
But if that had happened to her 30 years earlier, she
may not have
guarantee
even gone down that path.
No, she never would have had to. Again, she wouldn't have found herself in that situation to have to kill that man in the first place.
Yeah.
And again, that scene in Monster is so hard to watch.
Oh,
it's like
it is.
He's
It
pouring like
does drag
gasoline all
on.
over her head, and he's raping her, and we like see it all.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like that man was going to kill her.
Absolutely.
You know, it like sometimes there is like a kill or be killed kind of situation, and I was only talking about this with Aisling. We were watching Ready or Not, and that's another actually I think a good example of somebody who is not vilified for killing people, but it is a situation of like, if you don't kill this person, they're going to kill you. And I'm like, I think I would really struggle with that. Like, I know it's adrenaline and like it is fight or flight, and like you don't necessarily know how you're going to react in that situation. But like, I think if tonight when you leave, if I'm in this house and somebody breaks into this house and they have a knife in their hand and I have this beer bottle in my hand, if I had to kill them to survive, I think I would still really struggle with that. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think I would ever get over that.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's like, again, I think like humans are like, we've like removed ourselves from animals enough that we're like, no, that's not right.
Yeah. There's a moral sense to what you're doing in situations like that.
Exactly.
But also you could put the argument on exactly how that instance happened. Like, her fight or flight response kicked in, and what happened, and that, I mean, like, this is a huge instance, and it's a huge fear, for a well justified fear for many people, you know, sex workers, trans women who resort to sex work, a lot of people that have this terrifying fear that it is going to be now, whether it's a man or a woman, I can't say, but like, the point being that it could be that next person, and you just don't know. Just make sex work legal, because people are going to do it anyway. At least they can do it safely if it's legal. Yeah. You know, again, like, I wonder how many times that's happened as well, where it just hasn't been. Hold on, again, where it hasn't. I apologize for the crinkly sheets. They're Egyptian cotton. It's just how many times has that happened and we haven't known about it, you know? It's like Eileen Wuornos just happens to be one that got caught and one that didn't get away with it, you know? And again, just kind of like circling back around to Ed Gein very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. He wasn't the first. As you do. He was just the first to be revealed in that way. In a big way. You know, it's like people have always killed. People have always killed. And like, I think people are like, oh, it's gotten worse. And it's like, it actually hasn't, because it's become socially unacceptable to kill people. Yeah. Like, when you look at like the Romans or like burning Christians, like even the idea of, like, again, I think that's super cunt, just because of like, in a mythological way, the idea of Nero like burning Christians to like light parties and stuff like that. It's like that, but that was accepted. Or the idea of like the gladiator pit, where sicking them to the lions. That was killing for entertainment. Yeah. And people, but again, people had nothing else to kind of do. You know? Like, well, shit, I can't read because that's not even legal for me yet, you know? Yeah. You know, people have always been rotten. It's just what is and isn't socially acceptable varies from time to time. You know? I'm sure 100 years from now, shit that we deem fully acceptable now
will be looked back at as like, can you believe they used to do that?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I mean, like, an obvious example of that would be how far forward, at least even in the last 20 years, that the queer community has come. Do you know what I mean? Like, 30 years ago, 40 years ago,
It was
it's
illegal.
unthinkable to even, like, imagine such a thing as a non-binary person, a trans person, walking the streets proudly, two men holding hands, even getting married. All these types of things, like, exactly, I mean, like, 2,000 years ago, Nero was burning Rome to the ground. Like,
Nero was gay.
you know, and he also castrated his then boy lover
To look like his mother.
to look like his mother.
Yeah. Now that's cunt.
So, like, you know, these things can definitely be unthinkable.
Yeah.
And especially with relations to what we're talking about, you know. But I do actually want to talk about Dahmer.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. But again, very quickly, this is a really good reminder to be talking about the fact that I am not in no way, whether it was Miss Warnos or Mr. Dahmer, as if I was talking to them in court.
Mr. Dahmer. You know.
To the stand, please. I am not.
Go for Jeffrey, sorry.
Hi, how are you?
See, like, fucking, he has a fucking a John Benet Ramsey tattoo.
God.
I don't care. I love that tattoo. But again, that's like a weird celebration of something that's super morbid. I'm actually friends with somebody on Facebook who has a John Benet Ramsey tattoo.
But it's not to vilify these people, and it's not to I mean, like, Eileen Wuornos may have been a victim of her historical circumstances and all of this, but she still murdered 7 men. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey Dahmer may have had his psychological disposition, and he, with the proper treatment and the proper help, he would have never probably even become what he is today. Or
I don't
what
know.
He was. But
So I think
we
Dahmer's
can
a
say for
grey area for
sure
me.
that Dahmer was born evil.
I think so. Just because, like, I think he's kind of... You know, this is where I'm going to start getting into the comparisons to horror movie characters. I think Dahmer is...
Go off, sis!
Yeah, I think Dahmer is somewhat of a Michael Myers, in a way. At least the Rob Zombie Michael Myers, who... Or you know, fuck it, I'll say Carpenter's.
Why not?
The kid who... killed small animals, not for hunting, not for taxidermy or anything like that,
pleasure.
but for pleasure and out of morbid curiosity. And I think there's a little bit of that in all of us to varying degrees. I mean, like, all of my friends as kids would pull the legs off spiders and stuff, and for some reason that's looked at as differently than killing a dog or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, even though, like, it is still fucked up. But I do feel like as children it's hard to kind of discern that way. Because, like, again, a lot of it is curiosity. You know, it's like a child isn't looking at that. They're not thinking like, oh, fuck this spider, I'm going to do this to torture this spider. But, like, a lot of children do that in ways to kind of be like, what'll happen if I do this?
Yeah.
Because they don't know. But then, yeah, I think, like, he's a good comparison to Michael Myers in that way, because Michael is my example of somebody who was born evil. Or, okay, I feel like even saying born evil, it, like, sounds kind of problematic, but it's like somebody who is born with the capacity for this and acts out upon it from the jump, versus it being like a crime of passion or a fight or flight instinct, you know. Again, like, Michael is a good example because his first thing happened when he was a child, and that's all tied up with sex and stuff like that, you know. It's same for I kind of feel with Dahmer. Again, they showed in the show that, like, there's that scene where it's, again, I feel like the show is kind of ham-fisted, but, like, would it be a Ryan Murphy production if it wasn't? Where he's like jerking off in his bed or whatever, and he's looking at regular, like, straight porn, and it's, like, not going well for him. But then he's getting flashes of when he's doing taxidermy, and that does get him off.
Yeah.
So it is a weird thing where it's like, that's not him thinking, ooh, I'm gonna jerk off to this because I'm evil and I'm fucked up. It's like, that's genuinely just how his brain worked. It's just what he chose to do with the rest of his life. That that puts him in this different category.
Yeah.
You know, versus an Eileen, where I feel like with Dahmer, I feel like I don't feel like Dahmer's kind of situation was as dire or as fucked up as Eileen Wuornos, or as probably most of his peers. You know, I mean, like, this was a time where, like we see with his mother and his father fighting and stuff like that. This was a time where mental illness was going unchecked, and I don't assume he was the only one in his school who had a mentally ill parent,
yeah.
or mental illnesses himself, or parents who were getting divorced, which was on the rise at the time.
Yeah.
You know, but then also at the same time as Dahmer, or just before, you have the Vietnam War, where you have people who are going over, who are of his same age, who are committing just like really
fucked
atrocious shit.
Yeah.
And again, it's another massive breakthrough for America, because this is the first time America is seeing that it's not just America, like, land of the free, like, we're doing this to fight for your freedom. It's like, no, there are people going over there and raping women and then lighting them on fire, or like just killing for the sake of killing because they were told to, you know. And I feel like
burning villages to the ground.
It is, and I feel like that's weirdly celebrated, versus when you look at a Dahmer, who is basically doing the same thing, but it wasn't for country.
Yes.
So he's like this kind of piece of shit, which he is. But I'm saying, like, it's not to say that Dahmer was good. I'm saying that these people were also pieces of shit.
Yeah.
But America rallied behind these people, you know. In a weird minority, I do feel like a lot of people were like, "Oh shit." Like, again, there was massive, like, marches and protests against Vietnam by the youth and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, Dahmer, the interesting thing about him, right, is, so you remember the scale, the traits that I mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
So when psychologists started treating him and started, like, trying to find out, like, where on the psychopath scale he fell, he's not your cut and paste psychopath, but he was a serial killer. So, for example, Richard Ramirez, Ted
so
Bundy, and John Wayne Gacy all matched in the higher end of the scale, meaning, above 35, while Dahmer only matched 13 of the traits. So he was exceedingly low on the scale. Yeah. So, like I said earlier, you can be a serial killer, but be not a psychopath. And you can pick up on these, like, while you're watching interviews with him, like, especially after he was caught. He
seems very
strangely, he had interviews, like, while he was murdering people.
He seems very strangely like regretful, and remorseful in a way.
He comes across as repentant. He comes across as, like, self-doubting, and in a weird way modest. You know, it's.
They keeps asking me. They're like, "Do you want to go premium?" Sorry. I didn't know you were recording.
Oh my god. What's my train of thought again?
They're serial killers.
They're serial killers.
And
yeah.
Dahmer being remorseful. Sorry.
So Tinder and serial killers. So, like, juxtaposition to, like, other serial killers, like, who lacked, obviously, this apparent, like, normacy and empathy, the ability to, like, reflect on their victims and, like, the emotional toll it had, like, on their friends and family, you know, like, he's the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, when he took the stand, like, he, like, said he wanted to just die. He deserved death for what he did.
Yeah.
You know, and for years, like, you have the opposites, which you have Bundy, who tried tooth and nail to avoid being caught or receive jail time, and Gacy, who admitted to everything with cold indifference and, like, absolutely no remorse. And he also referred to his victims as pieces of his property, which is, like, you know, I mean, Ramirez said, "I love to kill people. I love watching them die."
You see, Ramirez is one I actually was talking to about him on the phone yesterday. Richard Ramirez is one of the only, like, serial killers that, like, just really creeps me out. Like, obviously he's, like, not around and stuff like that anymore. But, like, I remember one of the nights I was listening to My Favorite Murder did a shout out to them, one of my favorite podcasts.
Hey.
They did, like, an in-depth episode about just him, and it was just, like, listening, like, again, I knew the story or whatever, but just listening to, like, the details, it's like, it's like an actual horror movie, where it's like, that's a good example of somebody who, like, was aware of what they were doing and was aware that what they were doing was wrong and loved it, you know. again, he was kind of like, he played up the, like, occult thing, or he had, like, the pentagram tattoo in the middle of his hand, so he was kind of playing up to, like, the satanic, evil kind of thing of it, where also...
That was in the 60s, 70s?
No, it's the 80s.
The 80s?
Yeah,
oh, wow, I got my
like,
dates wrong.
He was only caught in, like, the
I'm thinking
90s or
of
something
Manson,
like
haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, Manson also is, like, a weird grey area where he didn't actually...
Do anything,
kill anybody,
but
quote
he
unquote.
planned it.
But he totally planned it, like, again. But also, people kind of get into the idea that, like, he may have been involved in MK Ultra and things like this, which I think there could be some credence to it. But just to touch on what you were saying, kind of to compare Dahmer to Bundy. Bundy was actually interviewed about Jeffrey Dahmer, and he was kind of like, he was like, no, I've never done anything like that. Like, he was kind of like weirdly judgmental about Dahmer, and it's like, you were a pedophile though, and you like kept people in that, like,
I don't know you're pointing at me.
No, but you know what I mean. It's like you like kept victims in, like, the walls of your house and, like, dressed up as a clown. I mean, like, he didn't pick people up dressed up as a clown. I think that's
Gacy.
I said Bundy. Didn't
You said
I?
Bundy.
Yeah,
I was like, wait,
no, Gacy.
Bundy did that too?
No, but, like, with Gacy, I feel like there's, like, weird... people kind of associate him with, like, always being dressed up as a clown. This is, like, fucking... You can't hear it. If we can play Silence of the Lambs in the background...
Oh, that's so true.
We can listen to Herbal Essences one time. And now, a break for our sponsors, Herbal Essences. No, but, like, when Gacy was interviewed about Dahmer and stuff, he was very like, oh, gross. Like, and it's like, you fucking did basically... Yeah, you did, like, basically the same thing and worse.
Stuck people in your walls.
Yeah, I feel
What's
like...
wrong with you?
I feel
Pogo.
Like... I feel like
you think you're everything? You're not?
I feel like he might have actually been kind of responsible for, like, the mass... fear of clowns again, like, back in the day, because then also right afterwards we get It by Stephen King, which was just a double whammy for the clown business. Poor clowns, I guess. You know? But yeah, just to say on Dahmer, it's like when he's being interviewed, he's already like, yeah, bro, I fucked up, and it's like,
he recognizes,
okay, but that didn't stop you from doing any of it.
Yeah,
you know, and, like, again, whether it was instinctual or whatever, I don't feel like he snapped enough. I feel like that instinct might have always been innate within him. In Nathaniel. Sorry. I dead named you.
You cunt. Did you just really dead name me on my own podcast? How dare you?
Sure did. I did it on my podcast too. But, no, I feel like, yeah.
I'm a cunt.
I don't know. I don't feel like Dahmer had so much of a snap in the same way Eileen Wuornos did.
Yeah.
Where I feel like that was always kind of in him, and I don't know, like always kind of had a taste for it. But then again, we even see in the show where he kills his first victim, he's kind of like, oh shit. He's like, oh my god, like, wake up, or whatever like that. And it's like, again, it's kind of shown from his perspective. Nobody was there to see that, so that is,
we don't know
could
if
be
it
absolutely
was
like hearsay or kind of sensationalization.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know, I think, like, Dahmer is a weird one, and, like, I don't blame people for constantly going back to that case, just because it is kind of fascinating. It is a weird grey area versus a Richard Ramirez, who I believe, like, was a good example of, like, human evil, like, in the same lines as, like, a Hitler or somebody like that, you know, where it's like some people just
are born that way.
Want to see the world burn or whatever.
Yeah.
They just want to see some fucked up shit happen.
Well, I think that's why Dahmer was able to fly under the radar so much, because he fit in with society easier, in a way, and he also lacked, like, the egotistical and sometimes, like, borderline on narcissistic expression that other murderers have,
like a Bundy.
Yeah. And, like, Dahmer, in fact, like, when he did take the stand, as I said, like, he acknowledged his evil. He called it, he said he didn't know it was a sickness, but he's calling it a sickness.
Yeah.
And wished, obviously, death upon himself. Like, he said that to the survivors of the victims. And, like, Dahmer is, obviously, he's not a case of neglect or abuse or sexual assault or any kind of, like, dysfunctional family upbringing.
Oh, he is, though.
He was, like, he didn't have the best upbringing, but he wasn't, like, the worst case of it, a la Eileen Wuornos, you know?
A la.
And Dahmer definitely, though, like, he remembers saying, like, he knew from an early age, i.e. like 9, 10, that there was something dark. There was an urge and a compulsion that stirred in him.
Yeah.
And from that moment, like, he actually said it, it's like from that moment he found this dead crab on a beach. He became fascinated with death, and for the next few years, obviously, he spent a lot of time dissecting bigger prey, such as household pets and rodents.
Now, see, if he had turned that into a fabulous, like, wall hanging, people wouldn't have thought shit about it. But because he did it just to do it,
yeah,
you know, it's like, that's
well, he
why
said
it's
he was
fucked up.
captivated by, like, how the insides moved.
I mean, that's. But again, I also don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there are there are ways to. But a surgeon does the same thing. But
My eyes are slowly getting bigger with him saying
no.
this.
But listen, I don't. No, but that's the thing. I don't think there is anything wrong with having that curiosity. It's what you do with it that, like, ultimately ends up separating you from one category to another.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, I would be lying if I wasn't saying that I was also fascinated with death as a child. But again,
Yes.
I didn't go out and murder dogs or anything like that, you know. But, like, again, yeah, I think, like, everybody has that morbid curiosity, whether that's listening to true crime podcasts or whether that's
Looking at crime scene photos or interviews with serial killers.
But exactly, it's
Yeah.
I have that massive morbid curiosity when it comes to stuff like that, even though it might make me kind of, like, recoil, or, like, it might horrify me or whatever. In my mind, I'm like, I have to see it.
You have to know.
You know, because then it takes away
Yeah.
a layer of, like, fear or something for me by, like, making it kind of real or making it not such a quote-unquote big deal.
Yeah.
You know, because death, again, it is a part of life. I feel like a lot of people hold death up as this weird, like, mystic kind of thing, even though it literally is just the other end of life, you know. Like, people don't hold death up the same way they do birth, and it's like, but they're literally, like, that's like the first page and the last page of a book, you know. But again, you can either kind of become a surgeon or become a serial killer. Yes. You know, it's like if a surgeon described to you what he did without telling you he was a surgeon, you'd be like, what the fuck? He's like, I cut people open every day. Yeah. And I get a lot of satisfaction from it. And people pay me a lot of money
it's satisfying
for it.
work.
You could either be a hitman, serial killer, or a surgeon.
That's true.
You know? But yeah, that's just kind of my point, is, like, it's what you do with those curiosities that ultimately, like, puts
defines
you in
it.
one category or not, you know?
Well, I think that's very interesting. I mean, like, that sort of
you
whole... yeah. You do.
Get on the microphone.
Well, the sort of morbid curiosity thing, I mean, like, you had, like, especially, like, just bouncing off of, like, thinking of, like, Ed Gein. Ed Gein voraciously read The Vault of Horror and Tales from the Crypt and all of that, where you had the sort of, like, his favorite was the Ember Island Headhunters, where they were going in, it was all about the white man's interpretation of voodoo and all of that kind of thing, and it was graphic stuff in those comics. And that was his kind of main thing, obviously, besides grave robbing and murdering people. But, like, that's a good example of, like, how society can, like, especially, like, in the 50s with your whole Doris Day period, where where everything was sort of swept under the rug. The dirt, the filth, the grossness of society was brushed under the carpet, and, like, things like you have the Vault of Horror and Tales from the Crypt, where that expression and need for the morbid and the gross and the weird and the dark comes to the forefront, shall we say.
Well, we get a lot of that in kind of, even, like, again, to bring it back to Scream, they kind of play on that where, like, again,
but which one? There's, like, 3 of them now.
What do you mean? There's 6 of them.
No, there's 3 titles named Scream.
What? There's only 2. Or no, there's the
2.
TV
Which one?
show too.
Oh yeah, there's
but
that.
Like, we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about
her. The idea that, like, or actually no, I'm going to kind of focus specifically on this second movie, because the idea of there's a good example of the 2 killers in that movie have completely different motives, and they're carrying out the same thing. One is going for good old fashioned revenge, which I think, like, has been maybe one of the most used excuses for murder in human history, is well, you did this to me. But again, that's also very simple. It's literal monkey logic. It's like, if I allow you to come into my area and commit something against me and I don't do anything about it,
You're going to do it again.
I'm going to be looked at as weak by all these other people. So if I don't retaliate, it's going to keep happening to me. Versus somebody like a Billy or Stu, where it's like, I've been influenced by society, you know?
Fuck
or
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, I actually don't think that's true. I feel like people kind of use that as a weird excuse.
Let's face it, Sharon Stone was not your mother.
Billy's mother! I feel like
that kind of chin, like
Billy
straight
mother.
up the spit coming out of mouth. I feel like a lot of time the idea of art imitating or life imitating art, I feel like that's kind of bullshit.
Yes,
because I feel like
I agree
if
with
you're
that.
a killer, you're going to kill people. If you're going to kill people, generally, you know, it's like I feel like an Ed Gein. I feel like Ed Gein would have killed people whether or not he read EC comics or whether or not he read horror comics or not. You know, there was like thousands of years before. That actually didn't make a nice little crinkle at all.
I thought it would make it a little bit more satisfying.
But there was thousands of years of human history before we ever had horror movies or violence on TV or violent video games or like how I remember growing up, Manhunter, that video game was banned because people kind of thought like, this is too much. People are going to get influenced by this. And it's like, but people have always killed, whether or not this shit has been around. But like again, there's always been stories of murder, stories of like cautionary tales or myth or monsters or whatever it is. You know, there's always been that. But I do feel like that's kind of a bullshit excuse to be like, well, I did it because I saw a horror movie or I played a violent game. You know, I doubt if anybody. Well. No, I feel like that's kind of bullshit, you know? It's like if you're going to kill somebody, if you've decided to kill somebody, if you're like going for, what is it, like first degree murder or whatever, like where you've planned it out, you're going to kill that person anyway, and it's not because
absolutely.
you've
gone to the trouble of planning it out. You are absolutely, like, you cannot, like it's crazy to me, like that, how long like decades that argument has lasted for. How these things can like just socially influence you and then cause you to suddenly, like, you know, shoot up a fucking movie theater. Like these things are just preposterous to be saying like this one thing was the reason.
Well, Billy even says it in the first Scream. Movies don't create psychos, they make psychos more creative.
Yes.
You know, it's like, I believe that maybe could be a thing. Like, you know, you look somewhere for inspiration or whatever. But, like, I don't feel like, like, again, before we had any kind of horror movie, any kind of violent TV, or any kind of violent video games, people killed. You know, it's weird to say that it's part of human nature, but, like, it absolutely is. It's just that's the reason why we have made such a big deal about demonizing it, is because people are like, don't fucking do that, because it doesn't benefit anybody. You know, it's the same reason why I feel like all war is stupid, because it's like, to quote D-Light, there's no winner in a war. You know, it's like you're just throwing like your meat against somebody else's meat and hoping that you have more meat left at the end of it. You know, it's fucking crazy.
That's true. But
then even in a war, it's like this kind of killing is fine, but that kind of killing is not. It's like, why? Not to say like, oh, why is one killing good? But I mean, like, why is it that like you think...
I think the argument falls on the justification for it. So like, if you think that something like a Jeffrey Dahmer is not okay, why is it okay for a country to go to, you know, another country, i.e. Afghanistan, Iran, and Tehran, all of those places, and butcher people and commit mass genocide, and still look back at it and be like, well, yeah, we that was absolutely necessary. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that we're a little off topic here, but I think it's absolutely like essential to understanding parts of the human psyche and why certain things are agreeable while others are not.
Yeah,
you know?
Like I think we've evolved past the primate idea of, like what I was saying earlier, of revenge and things like this. It's like it's weird. It's the idea of like, oh, well, you took from me, I'm going to take from you. But then how do I know you're not just going to turn around and take from me again? And then that just starts, like, that's how you have these, like, 100-year-long family feuds or blood feuds or
the British
gang wars or, I mean, well like, they deserve it. We just don't. We just, again, we treat them like the wolves in Dracula. They're referred to off screen. You know?
I love it.
Oh, the idea of being referred to as Hibernian is kind of cool, though.
Yeah,
I'll
like
take
it.
that, you know. But again, though, it's like that, like the shit that happened like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Like I joke about it all the time, but it's like that still has very real, lasting implications now.
Yes.
You know,
We no longer have our own language as a result of it being forcefully taken out of our mouths. Like,
and even the
it's,
idea
you
that
know,
like even the idea of getting the North back, the idea that people think that like that will still be violent, and I feel like maybe not. Just the like I feel like the more you progress, the less acceptable violence gets. Because like I feel like people are like, oh, today's day and age it's so violent, and it's like, no, it's actually never been less violent.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's it only has become socially more unacceptable to kill. You know, as time has gone on, like we were saying about like gladiator pits or burning Christians or
World Wars.
or World War.
You
That's
know.
why I feel like I'm being a little bit naive, but in my mind I'm like, I don't think we'll have another World War. You know, fingers crossed.
Well, I mean, sort of pulling it back to our sort of more to the core subject matter of that kind of you know, speech and things like that. I do think another defining example of categorizing traits is something that's called the 5-factor model. And it's the 5 factors are, I think, if you think of them like your 5 fingers, you have extroversion, you have extroversion, you have agreeableness, you have conscientiousness, you have openness to experience, and you have neuroticism. So a psychopath has a combination of low agreeableness and conscientiousness and high in neuroticism. So these levels of conscientiousness can be applied to serial killers, where, for example, you have someone who has a high level of conscientiousness and a high level of neuroticism, but low in agreeableness. So you have someone like a Patrick Bateman, who is what you call a high-functioning, organized killer. So at least at the beginning of the film, shall I say, before he loses his shit. So you have someone like him he's socially proficient, high intelligence, skilled in employment, and
Allegedly.
allegedly.
I mean, he watches Jeopardy in his office.
Girl, and methodical with the lives of the people around him. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum would be a low level one would be obviously Ed Gein. Ed Gein is a disorganized killer. He's less intelligent. He is extremely high in neuroticism, and
He wasn't very careful.
no, he basically told people that he was the murderer. But he, in case anyone out there doesn't know what neuroticism is, it is a high capacity for depression, low self-esteem, and low intelligence.
Shut the fuck up.
So,
I'm depressed. I'm not dumb, okay?
I'm crazy, not stupid.
I'm a bitch. I'm not a stupid bitch, okay?
You can call me a bitch. Just not a fat bitch.
That thing in Scary Movie too, when she's like, I'm not crazy. Ah! And then runs like that. We actually haven't started to kind of get into the horror movie aspect of it yet. We've kind of only really mentioned Michael. Do you mind moving on to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely, by all means. Because
Okay.
like now that we have these sort of categorical how should we say it? Like how we can categorize these serial killers. We can categorize the murderers that Hollywood has created based off of them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Leatherface would be an example of a low-level, disorganized killer.
I think Nurture, though.
Nurture is absolutely prevalent in that,
Because,
for
like,
sure.
even for example, now, when the new Texas Chainsaw, he hasn't murdered anybody in a long time.
No.
Because there's nobody around him murdering.
Caused.
Exactly. Like, he's just kind of doing what he was told, you know? But, again, he was obviously, like, kind of running, like, the elevator didn't quite go all the way to the top with Leatherface, you kind of feel like Chelsea from Dead Meat always says, she categorizes him as like her special little boy, that it's like he's one that could be quote unquote fixed, that he could be rehabilitated. You know, it's like,
depending on what origin story, because there's a lot of origin stories for.
So I'm gonna go with the first two, like the original two Tobe Hooper movies and kind of the new movie. Just because I feel like that,
because that's meant to be a direct sequel, right?
It is, yeah. I feel like that, that Leatherface lines up most with the Leatherface that we see in those first two movies. Even though he becomes a little bit more of a Michael Myers at the end, but I feel like with somebody like a Leatherface, it's like that's absolutely, he's a product of his environment. Whereas if he had been taken out of that environment and raised somewhere else, he might not have done that. And also, you see, these people are also victims of circumstance in a way where we find out that, like, they've been laid off their jobs. They have absolutely nowhere else to go.
They're ostracized from their communities.
Exactly. And even in the remake,
they got kicked out of the church.
Like they started eating people because there was literally no other
food. Yeah.
You know, and that's happened to plenty. Like, you look at the... was it the Argentinian team for that movie Alive?
Oh,
you know, where they crash?
Yes.
And they all end up having to kind of decide on... I feel like everybody's had that conversation that it's like, look, if we're ever on a desert island situation, if I die first...
You're dying first.
But it's like, if I die first...
Just saying.
Go ahead. Who fucking said you were invited, bitch? But,
I'm on that plane. I'm fucking telling you.
Oh, you're dying to eat me. But again, like, it's the whole thing of like, look, if whoever dies first, if needs be, go ahead and eat me.
Go ahead.
You know, we actually worked out the caloric intake of Ash's boobs.
Stop.
We could, calorie wise, live on a boob each from Aisling for 2 weeks per boob. Going by weight and going by fat content in breasts and stuff like that. Listen, it doesn't help to plan ahead. Or it doesn't hurt, you know. But yeah, I feel like everybody's kind of had that like conversation or whatever. But again, that also gets into like weird other kind of like internationally accepted taboos, the idea of like cannibalism and stuff like that. It's like, I wouldn't kill any of you guys to eat you, but also I would absolutely eat you if I had to. I'm not saying that it would be easy, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Do you know another horror movie villain who is absolutely a victim of his circumstances?
No, you'll have to tell me.
Is Jason Voorhees. He is absolutely a victim of his circumstances.
Well, he was murdered.
He, so first of all, obviously, I mean, apart from obviously the superficial stuff, which is he was born with deformations around obviously his face and head, which is, it's part of the canonical shit. Look it up, bitch, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's in every movie.
It's in every movie. It's why he wears the fucking mask, I'm telling you. So, like, I do believe that he is, now, obviously, apart from, obviously, the magical shit that goes on behind it, he is a victim of his circumstances, not to find the fact that he's got a fucking demon, weird worm thing that lives inside of him.
He's also a zombie, and then becomes even more of a zombie, in, like, a Frankenstein kind of way.
Yeah, and then merged with nanobots. Don't forget that.
Listen, I don't fucking care. Jason X fucking kicks ass, bro. You can fucking suck my dick if you don't think so. But Jason is a weird example of he's kind of a feral child.
Yes.
In a way where they're kind of blameless because it's not their fault. Whereas like he was kind of raised by himself in the woods, kind of raised by wolves, if you will.
Yeah.
The idea that it's like he didn't have any other thing to compare to, you know, and you do find that it's like at certain ages, again, like you said, he's completely a victim of circumstance.
Yeah.
That like his mother was killed in front. Well, that's the remake actually, but like, oh well, no, because he does see it. The Friday canon, like the Friday lore, is kind of weird because he's dead, but then in that first movie he comes back, but then also he's a fully grown man, like right afterwards. Is it a dream? Is it a vision? Whatever. But yeah, I do feel like Leatherface and Jason are kind of in the same category.
I would say is also a victim of circumstance. She watched her boy literally get murdered.
Yeah, but then she killed people that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I suppose
she
actually,
killed
that makes sense.
those first two campers, I believe, in the first movie in the opening scene for Friday. are the campers that let him die, and then she just continues to kill them and kill them and kill them.
And as
kill
they go
them.
along, yeah.
But yeah, with Jason, he kind of like that as a feral child, and kind of like he has nothing else to compare to. Like we see, like with the shrine to his mother and stuff like that, the way Jenny in the second movie is able to escape is she's actually a child psychiatrist, or she's in college for that, and she uses that against him, where she puts on his mother's clothes,
His
and
jumper,
like it's like,
her
Jason,
jumper.
Mother said stop, okay, you know, and like uses that against him, and I feel like
Get me the axe!
I feel like comparing him to like a Michael or somebody like that, where at least from what we can see, I actually had two Michaels to talk about. Like John Carpenter's Michael, as it appears, has a totally normal upbringing.
Yeah.
It is shocking when it happens to him, or when he does what he does. His parents we actually don't ever get to see his parents in that opening scene, and that's it. We get no other real backstory. But then, so I believe like he's a good example of nature, where he just has that in him. But then in Rob Zombie's version, we get to see that he had a really, really horrible life, and was abused by his sister
And his father.
and his stepfather, and like his first kill in that movie, his first human kill in that movie
Is his dad?
is his bully,
Oh, is his bullet? Yes.
because they're like
Now I
rubbing
remember.
the rabbit in red clothing of his mom in his face and stuff like that. And again, like plenty of people get bullied and don't end up killing their bullies or whatever, much as we want to. You don't, because it's wrong to kill people.
Thank you for making that distinction.
But no, but seriously, no, but like, or even like a Carrie or somebody like that. It's like, who hasn't wanted to be fucking Carrie? You're just like, you know
That's
what?
true.
Fuck all you people. You're like, but then you don't, because you don't want to kill your whole
Yeah.
school or whatever.
They can clean my toilet, I don't care.
But or actually, Carrie as well is a good example of kind of a feral child, where she was raised kind of closed off from society.
The woman was literally shoved into a closet and told to pray to Saint Sebastian.
I mean,
You pray that gay away!
but seriously though, even in the book, she's new to that school. She hasn't been
Plug
in that
it
school the whole
up!
time.
Plug it up!
But for us, she's been homeschooled,
Yeah.
and her mother is
She's completely unaware of outside society.
like she wasn't aware of her period or anything like that. Like again, she's a little bit higher level of civilized than like a regular feral child, but like Carrie just had no other reference, and like it had like was not taught with how to deal with any of this stuff, you know, and is kind of the only way like she's shown to express emotion is through violence, like by her mother, you know. But even her mother had been ostracized from her own religious community for being so much of a Puritan, that it's like, that movie is actually kind of weird. I want to know what her religion is, because if sex, even within marriage, or sex even for creation, is
a sin,
that just kind of leads to like the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like her mother believed by having her that she was living in sin, even though she had him with her husband. You know, poor Carrie, man. You know, but then again, can you blame Carrie?
Yeah, it's true.
But then also, I feel like you could use that for the Columbine thing, where it's like
Yeah,
saying
you
that,
sort
I
of
can kind of
muddling
blame
the
them.
line there, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, again, it's easier to say because it's not real and because it's
Yeah.
supernatural or whatever. But
Well, I mean, like, throughout the entirety of Carrie, you're also... quite literally, if it's apart from I think that the phys ed teacher, whatever her name is,
Miss Desjardins,
and then the one who like legitimately wants to try and help her and be her friend.
So
Everyone else in that school is a fucking asshole.
see, even Miss
Even
Desjardins,
Tommy, or whatever the fuck his name is.
I don't know. Tommy is sweet. You kind of do get the fact that he like.
Is that because he has shoulder length curly blonde hair?
Oh no, he like I don't find him hot at all.
You don't find him fuckable?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But in that movie,
I thought at least I would have had that with you anyway.
no, John Travolta was sexy back in the day. But back in the day,
I completely forgot he was in that.
But he, you know, he is a psycho in that movie. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
Like, in the kind of movie general term, psycho. Like, again, we don't have any inkling as to like what his mental state is, but he kind of like he kills pigs in that movie to get the fucking to get the blood and all that stuff. But even with Miss Desjardins, who I forget what her fucking name is in the movie, because they don't call her Miss Desjardins in the movie, in the
Farrah
De Palma
Fawcett
movie.
hair.
She's kind of basically telling Carrie to just fit in, Like she's
rude.
No, but she's encouraging her in a weird way instead
to
of being like
assimilate and acclimate.
exactly instead of being like, no, you're actually not fucked up. Like you actually are kind of cool anyway. She's very like, look, you could just do this, and they would accept you. You could just curl your hair and they would accept you, you know. And then I don't know. I feel like Carrie is almost an unreliable narrator in that movie because when she does go there and does go to the prom, people are like all about her.
Yes, that's true.
But like people are kind of like, oh shit, like you look really fucking good, and
But you also
made that
don't
dress
know
yourself.
if that's her being lulled into a false sense of security.
Well, see, it's weird. That whole movie is so fucked up because again, she's the vote that wins it.
Yeah, but
It's
that was rigged.
to the
wasn't
devil. It was rigged, but she won by one vote. If she hadn't have voted for herself, she wouldn't have won. So she says, "I am to the devil with false modesty," and she votes for herself, and that's why she wins. You know, but even at the end where they're all laughing at her, it's like, are they though? Because it's shot.
We're all gonna laugh at you.
Well, because everybody there's some shots where people are like, ugh, like everybody's disgusted, but then there's other shots where people are laughing at her. But we only get to see that from Carrie's POV, and it's in like a weird kaleidoscope pattern where it's like, is she thinking people are laughing at her, or
Is she imagining it the whole thing? Yeah.
yeah? And again, like Carrie is not dealing with a full deck of cards. She wasn't raised the same way as everybody, and like has no other outlet to express or learn about emotions. So I don't think she can be fully blamed. It's the same as like what's the fucking movie, The Rage or something like that? Not Carrie 2, but it's
Oh, that knockoff thing.
no, it's when I forget which movie it is. It's a Cronenberg movie, The Brood. Actually, the director David Cronenberg was kind of thinking, I could be wrong with who quoted this, but the quote is the same, that hearing a child cry in a hospital room, if they could like personify that, how would they, like, how fucking scary would that be? What's this? Jisk. Sorry. Carrie kind of reminds me of that, where it's like she's acting like a child in that she's not emotionally developed, but when children do that, when children throw their toys or when children destroy their surroundings, it's only not looked at as weird or fucked up or scary because they're a child. And I feel like Carrie fits into that category and can't really be blamed in the same way somebody like like the Columbine shooters can be. Do you know what I mean? Because they came from normal families and stuff. I do believe that those boys kind of like just kind of had the, like, they wanted to fuck shit up. You know, they also tried to blame like Marilyn Manson for that and stuff like that. And it's like, oh god, whatever, out of here.
I mean, he is a white beater, but like we won't go there.
And the rest,
but let's sort of move on to not a victim of circumstance, Freddy Krueger. He is my choice for an absolute non-victim of circumstance. He is. Are
we going remake or are we going Wes Craven?
We going Wes Craven.
Because remake, he's worse because he actually is.
He is an actual thing. So my firm stance on this. I mean, it was always insinuated in the films that, well, the Wes Craven films, that he was a child molester without explicitly going there, shall we say. Without all but confirming it.
I don't know. I always just kind of I never thought that really. They go there in like Freddy vs. Jason because he's like licking the photographs and stuff. But like that was kind of the first time I thought that.
Oh no, I got child molester right from the first film.
Honey, I got child molester from the go. Okay.
So he was definitely someone that I was like, that is evil from the beginning.
Yeah.
That was, like, even if, like, obviously he's a victim of being burned alive or whatever, but, like, the point being that he, from the beginning, even if he wasn't dead, invading your dreams and killing, he would still be stalking the streets.
Yeah.
I can imagine him still not wearing that dirty ass sweater, but like a la New Nightmare, like stalking the streets, and taking kids. I can purely imagine that with him, and like I cannot unsee the fact that right from the get, especially with Nancy's death, that you know, even if it wasn't a dream, he's a dream murderer and things like that, he would have done that even if he was alive. Yeah. You know, he would have not, you know, plastered her across the ceiling, but he would have dragged her about. He would have torn her to shreds. He would have done anything he could to get his kicks from from that moment, you know?
Well, you can look at him as like a great example of trauma in that way, where it's like ultimately he came back to get them in their dreams or whatever it is. I actually think the story would have been like, not to fault Wes Craven or anything. Like, again, that man is like genuinely
Legend,
one of my
icon,
heroes.
icon, legend that you are.
But I genuinely think the story could have been made more interesting. Well, actually, just before no, you know what? I'll continue with my current point instead of literally interrupting myself. I think it could have been more of an interesting story if Freddy didn't kill those kids and Freddy was falsely accused, and that's why he's coming back to get this revenge thing. But I think, to go back to the idolization, Freddy is the one that people kind of root for the most, even though he's literally a child killer / child molester. People root for him more than I feel they do Jason or Michael or even a Leatherface.
I do think that's purely just because he becomes more of a gimmick halfway through his own series. He really does. I mean, like, the last time I can really think Freddy was menacing was 1 and 2. After that, he sort of became more of this, not necessarily comedic character, but he was sort of like the mainstay where you were like, okay, he's going to get this kid.
Well, that's why you go to see, that's why you watch those movies.
Exactly.
For
the kills.
Like, I watch Scream for Neve Campbell.
Yeah.
You know, but like, I watch Nightmare on Elm Street movies for Freddy. You know?
Well,
he's
I mean,
a cartoon.
So this is actually an interesting one, which would be obviously the Scream franchise. Not that you have to break down every single person, but I do think that is definitely not necessarily victim of circumstances, because you do have genuine psychopaths in Stu and Billy Loomis, but kind of like later on down the line, there's more just a revenge arc, shall we say, for the second 2 films. Then the 4th film is, what's her name, Madison? Is her name Madison?
No, it's Jill,
where she's just like, I want to be famous, fuck
which
you,
was actually
it's your
so ahead
moment.
of its time if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, wanted to be internet famous and stuff. That was not really a huge thing in 2011. I feel like if that was made, that would almost work for the most recent Scream movie. Like, that would work as a motive for now, and you wouldn't think it was dated or anything. I see. I always think the one that I think I would be the most afraid of, maybe, out of all the ghost faces, is, that's a weird sentence, ghost faces. Out of
Ghost face eye?
Ghost fi? Yeah.
Plural?
Is it like sheep? Like sheep's ghost face? You know, look at those ghost faces over there. You know, would be Mickey from the second movie, because he was already an active serial killer and just jumped in on that. And
didn't
he's
she
the only
like
one...
find?
They found each other in a chat room.
Oh my god!
Very 90s.
Whoa!
I love that. No, she's also like, my motive isn't as 90s as Mickey's. It's just good old fashioned revenge. But I think Mickey was kind of like the scariest one for me.
Billy's mother!
I think like he would be the scariest one for me out of all of those killers, because he had no motive. He did it because he wanted to kill people, that was why. Whereas like, so just like very quick breakdown. So there's like Stu, peer pressure, I think. Like, I think like that is like his thing. Billy was
My mommy's gonna be so mad at me!
Feel a little woozy here. Oh, I'm wearing my Scream shirt.
You dick!
But wait!
There's more! God damn, you
There's
can
a
use
tweam up! I can't not think of Ray in Scary Movie now. So then...
Wait, is it cut now?
Yeah. But,
Ray fucked me!
I don't give a fuck. We're going to discuss those on the podcast.
Oh, we
at some
will.
point.
We will. We have to
only
do
the
it.
first
We have
two,
to do
though.
it for April though, because that's Stoner Month.
Sure.
So
Only
I
the
think
first
I'm
two.
more than happy.
I'm not talking about the third. Actually, no.
The third and
I
fourth.
can do the
There's
third.
a fifth one as well, isn't there?
Yes. Bad. It's,
It certainly went
digress.
downhill.
So then, like, Mrs. Loomis, Billy's mother.
Billy's mother!
Again, revenge. Mickey just wanted to kill people.
Yeah.
Roman was...
Stepbrother?
Roman,
Half-brother?
Half-brother. Roman, I feel,
That's
is...
a stepbrother, isn't it?
No, because he was...
half-brother?
No, stepbrother was married in.
Oh, right, okay.
Like if your dad married my mom, you would become my stepbrother. But if we shared a parent,
gross.
if we shared one parent, we would be half brothers. But Roman is the one I feel the most sympathetic for because, again, he's kind of victim of circumstance in a way where he was abandoned by Maureen Prescott and looks at Sydney in... Again, like, I'm not saying, like, he's justified in doing this, but it's like he's also the only one where Sydney is kind of like, I kind of get it. A little bit. Like, their last
she feels
moment,
remorse for, I think,
she stabs the shit out of him.
Yeah.
But again, that's a kill or be killed moment. But I feel like they have a moment of... It's actually very Laurie and Michael in a way. But they have a moment where he is dead, where she, like, grabs his hand and is like, I kind of understand. You know, like, you obviously had it like a shitty life. You're like, it's not petty, kind of, you know. And then Jill wanted to do whatever. Like, Jill wanted to be famous. She wanted Sydney's thing, which is kind of like Roman in a way. And then...
The Manson chick.
Why do I always forget his name? Because there's the other fucking kid, Charlie in Scream 4, was kind of the stew. He did it because he was going along with Jill because he was in love with her, kind of thing. And then
I'm gay.
And then Amber. I like Amber as a ghost face. People kind of, I think, kind of shit on her or whatever like that. But I'm like,
I'm gonna be totally honest. I fucking knew that was coming.
But I think that was kind of on purpose, though. Like,
the boyfriend. I called the boyfriend from the beginning.
How many times
just by looking at the poster? I remember telling you that because I didn't see the trailer. I remember telling you, I was like, it's him or it's her.
But how many times out and out do they just straight up imply that Billy is the killer in that first movie?
That's true, but only in hindsight. Because in hindsight, you have 20/20 vision.
I don't think so. I feel like it's like up until Ghostface comes in and stabs him. Or whatever, I feel like you're thinking he's the killer anyway.
That's true, but I mean,
like
there's a lot of
I feel like she was totally
well,
a red herring.
That, like, yeah, true.
This has just become a general Scream franchise talk now. I'm sorry.
So you know who you're gonna love this. You know who I also think is a victim of circumstance?
Who?
And this is gonna be so contrived.
Who?
Payman and Pazuzu.
Oh, because they were summoned.
Pretty much, but also they're fallen angels and they didn't like God, so they were like, fuck, we gotta be the bad guy now.
No sympathy for the devil.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
Listen, Payman, okay.
Payman was like, I'm just happy to be here.
Listen.
Pazuzu was like, let's get it on.
No, Pazuzu was like, why did you fucking call me here? Pazuzu was like,
Pazuzu was like, what an excellent day for an act. That was sarcasm. He was just like, what an excellent day for an exorcism.
You can tell Pazuzu was just kind of over it. It's like,
he is.
Sake, get me out of this 12-year-old. You know?
This bitch was calling me Captain Howdy. I don't know what the fuck she thought I was.
Again, Reagan is also a kind of good example of that, where it's like Reagan is like a weird... I feel like Reagan and like Danny from The Shining, stuff like that, where it's like they're not the ones doing it, they're kind of a conduit for it, where it's like they're just weird. They're just like odd kids or whatever. I don't feel like they can be kind of categorized. But
what about zombies? Here's a really interesting
what kind
thing.
of zombie?
Let's stay basic. Let's stick with Romero zombies.
Oh, no voodoo zombie?
No,
because voodoo zombies are absolutely victims.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's talk about Romero zombies because I mean, obviously, like with literally like each film, the reason for the zombie, sorry, should we say the cause? I mean, the first one was I think it was like
some space,
like
a space
Venus
virus
thing,
yeah.
And then the next one is heavily implied that it was aliens, but I. So it's sort of a middle ground because obviously they have no control over themselves.
Yeah.
And you have to be bitten to transform and things like that.
But also the dead just come out of the graves in those movies as well.
Yeah. So like my sort of blurry line with zombies is what it does to human beings. In general. So you know the way it was always just like, oh, they shot the black guy at the end of Night of the Living Dead.
Which is by happenstance.
It is, but it became a political jargon afterwards. The point being that it sort of slowly over time, and you have this, for instance, with The Walking Dead, that it changes people, not into zombies, but the living people who are not bitten, who are not contaminated, or blah blah blah, that they change into evil.
Oh, as people are the real monsters.
Yes.
Well, so that's why The Walking Dead became boring to me, because I'm like, you can only really do that
A few
so much
times
before it just becomes not even about zombies at all anymore.
Yeah.
I think zombies do fit into the category of feral, where it's like they're kind of like, you can't blame a rabid animal, like a rabid animal for attacking an animal. You can't blame. Listen, I've had a drink.
Yeah, we're a little bit tipsy, I'm going to admit.
You can't blame a rabid animal for attacking you. I just said it again. You can't blame like an animal with rabies for being rabid.
Yeah. Oh, that's another one, Cujo.
Cujo is absolutely a victim of circumstance, and it's not his fault at all. But also, so are Dee Wallace and the kid that rock up.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
they just happen to be stranded there. It's like nobody. Well, Cujo actually has like kind of a kill count in that movie, though. He kills like 6 people.
Oh,
or
true.
something.
Yeah.
And in the book,
I
the
love
kid
that
dies,
dog.
but not because of Cujo, but because of exhaustion and dehydration.
Yeah. That's sad.
I feel terrible for Cujo, just because it's like that poor guy, that poor dog. You know, it's like he didn't do shit.
And sort of my last one that I sort of really like, I like the idea of is Maturin and Pennywise. So this is something.
Pennywise is just evil and wants to feed on kids.
So like I think we've spoken about this before, but I'm so surprised we haven't actually done an It film yet. Which we've got to do.
Because it'll be 4 hours long.
It'll be great though. The one thing about Pennywise, and this is purely just going off of the book,
which I'm rereading at the moment,
rather than the films.
Yeah.
Purely just because you get a very big insight into the inner mind and the workings of the entity that is it. Where it is
she who is it.
You reveal it's
for
a she
who is it,
because she identifies as a she. Thank you.
What's up, there, girl? Pennywise is just clown presenting. It's clown passing.
The way I look at it is
clown privilege. I'm just saying.
You clown fucker. Come on, Dolly. So like my thing with it is I love this idea, and it's the same thing, and this is sort of off topic, with someone like Sauron from Lord of the Rings, who is just evil incarnate.
Yeah.
And Pennywise, the entity that embodies the clown that eats kids, purely does it out of its fun. It's fantasy for it. It gets excited. It likes salting the meat.
I was going to say they taste better with fear.
You know, and like that's a part that like it always kind of speaks to. Sometimes just keeping it simple, evil, is better than telling me, oh, there's this diverse background.
Well, it's scarier
as to why it's evil, because you need to have some sort of like understanding or connection. Just tell me it likes eating kids and it likes scaring them before it eats them.
Like there's no bargaining.
I'm
or
down
anything.
for that.
Yeah,
you know, that's how that works for me, and I like that this is the nature of that evil. There's no ultimate grand scheme. It's just, I'll fuck you up and then I'll eat you.
Thank you for that segue. Speaking of nature, one thing I always thought was really sad was the shark from Jaws.
Yes! Oh my god!
Like, that shark isn't evil, it's just a shark.
It's also a victim of its circumstances.
Like again, that's another example of people are the real evil. Like the villain in that. You know, if you want to get into the actual
mayor?
Is the mayor. If you want to get into the villainy, read the book. Honestly, you can read it in a day or two. It's not very long. It's also very, very good.
I always loved how you told me about like the beginning of that book and like the perception of like the shark.
Oh, because they just call it the fish, and it's just no, but it is. It's so much scarier because like they describe. Like, again, I feel like that's one of the most iconic scenes in all of cinema. But, like, I always... And this is the morbid curiosity stuff. I always wanted to see what was happening below the surface. Like, because, again, I'm a gore hound. Like, I want that, you know?
Give me the gnashing teeth and the blood in the water.
And even in that movie, all we see is her hand. But it's like, they're talking about, like, there's a thorax and stuff. So there is, like, more of her body discovered. We just don't see that. But in the book, it's so scary. Just because she swims out... like far enough that she can't like see like the land or whatever, like she's far enough, and then we get the sense that, or we're told that the fish just kind of senses something in the water and then just kind of circles around from like a good few meters out and comes up from underneath her and is like circling around. And first it takes off her leg and she reaches down because she feels this like rush, and she like feels, and there's just nothing there, and she's like, oh my god, and she's panicking. And then when they find her, they find everything except, or they like, it's like she's been bitten away from, from like her left boob is missing, and all they find is like from her right boob up or whatever. It's so much scarier. But in that book and in the movie, it's like a little bit more implied that like the mayor is the evil in that movie, that like he fed people to the shark. Essentially, that shark didn't do anything wrong. That shark is just a shark.
They should have closed the beach.
Yes, but are you going to close the beaches? I don't think that's very funny. I don't think that's very funny at all. I fucking love that movie so much. But no, I feel like Steven Spielberg even said he regrets kind of like making the shark be evil, because it's like a personal attack, and
it's
like
just,
as it goes further along in those movies.
It is purely just an animal.
It's just eating.
It's just there for the fact it's not doing it emotionally. It's not driven by emotions. It's just driven by the need to, oh, you taste nice.
Not until
I'm
the
hungry.
third and fourth movie, where the shark is acting out of revenge.
That's true.
But in the third movie, it actually makes sense because they steal its baby, and then the baby dies in captivity,
bastards.
and then it's literally SeaWorld. SeaWorld like put their name to that movie. Like where they are is SeaWorld.
Yeah, well, SeaWorld is fucked. So.
I mean, it is. Again,
they're the
like,
real villains.
Again, it's even look at it that way.
Yeah.
Was it Tillicum? That's the Tillicum was not evil. Again, there's no recorded history of orcas attacking people in the wild ever. That's saying there isn't any recorded cases.
Yeah.
I'm still not swimming out next to them because that beast is too big. But in captivity they go crazy. But also I've seen how orcas act towards sea lions and act like cats in that way. But again, I don't think cats are evil. That's just the cat's nature.
A cat just plays with its food before it eats it.
Or brings it to you as like a... It's like when your cat brings stuff like that, it's like, you should learn how to hunt. Like, I'm bringing you a gift almost. Like, you don't hunt very often. I'm trying to do this. Now, another example, a little bit more fantastical, is the xenomorph. The xenomorph is an insect, and they like,
act as a hive.
Exactly, and their entire purpose is just to further the race, the same way an ant or a bee or most other insects would. But they're looked at as like, they can't be reasoned with, and they can't whatever. And it's like, but they don't have that capacity.
Yeah,
it's not that they're like smart and they're choosing to fuck you up. You know. Also, most of the time, you just happen to land in their nest.
Yes,
and they're like,
that's
get
true.
the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know,
they're just reacting how worker bees or hornets would react if you stuck your hand into their nests. That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, it's entirely instinctual.
It's entirely instinctual. There's no malice there. It's just like they're literally in that second film. Get the fuck out of our goddamn hive.
Same thing for
they own the
Leatherface.
place.
In that first movie, I don't know what the I don't know what the breaking and entering laws are in Texas, but I'm pretty sure if Leatherface had just killed Kurt, he couldn't have gotten away with that.
Yeah, it's
true.
true.
You broke into my fucking house. Like, they always joke. I think like on Dead Meat they always joke about this and stuff. That it's like the first Texas Chainsaw is almost a home invasion movie from Leatherface's perspective.
Yeah,
you know, it's the
absolutely.
Strangers, but for Leatherface. You know.
It's true.
But I don't know. I think, like, again, I feel like people kind of separate ourselves from animals. Or what's that quote where it's like, what separates us from animals is the ability to cry or some shit like that, or the ability to feel emotions. I think it's opposable thumbs. But people kind of... Like, I made this point earlier, like, humans, like, separate ourselves. We're like, we're not animals. And it's like, no, we are. Like, we absolutely are. We just decided that murder is wrong and stuff. And I do think it is. Like, I'm not like, advocating for murder or anything. But, like...
You are.
No, but I'm saying, like, again, like, nobody thinks it's fucked up when a tiger kills another tiger.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
We should kill Caesar! Sorry, we actually had said at the top of this episode has such potential to be such a hot mess, and also we're drinking. I feel like we're starting to tangent, but I still feel like it's all relevant, though.
We should just totally kill Caesar.
This started off as true crime. Now we're talking about, like, the shark was not to blame in Jaws, okay? But seriously, I remember as a child, like, kind of understanding that. I always cried when the shark died in the first two Jaws movies, because it's like,
It was just
didn't
doing
do
what
anything
it's
wrong.
supposed to do.
You know, it's a fucking shark, bro. I feel like, what? That shark only eats Chrissy,
The little
eats
kid.
Alex, eats A-Dog, and he didn't even kill that fucking boat guy. He just, like, sank the boat.
That's true.
You know, and Quint. That's 5 people in the span of, like, a couple of weeks. You know, it's like, that's kind of,
Slut.
but, like, that's kind of typical shark behavior. It's just eating. You know, we didn't do anything wrong. You know, but yeah, even Spielberg was like, I kind of regret, like, vilifying the shark, because people got really, really afraid of sharks after that. You know,
Well, to a certain extent, I suppose, as they should be. But
it's like, you just got to know shark. You just got to know how to speak to a shark, okay? You know?
You gotta be a shark whisperer.
No, but seriously, though,
Okay.
apparently, like, again, I've always been fascinated with sharks. With certain shark species, it's like, if you see a shark in the water, you don't, like, thrash about and run around and stuff, because it's like, they see that
You
as,
go
like,
underneath
that's
it, you
prey.
take it by the snout, and then you twist it into a ballerina.
But,
Did you ever see that video?
It is. You're supposed to redirect their head away from you. But it is, though. You know, I would absolutely love to go cage diving with sharks or some shit at some point, because it's like, they're... I'm literally just tangenting so hard. I literally was about to be like, they're a marvel of evolution. You know, they haven't changed in, like, millions and millions of years. So anyway, Patrick Bateman's crazy. Eileen didn't deserve to be killed.
And Jeffrey Dahmer was a fag. Thank you.
Seriously, bro. I mean, facts. You know what? I'm not even going to tell you. We're going to do Death Proof next week.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, you horny bitch. I suddenly got very turned on.
Fuck yeah.
Down in the Mexicali.
Yeah, okay, I'm down for this. I don't feel like we've actually reached into exploitation movies just yet, really.
Yeah. We did do B movies and horror trash and all of that. But I do think Death Proof is sort of drawing, obviously, inspiration from them. Obviously, Grindhouse Features was
It's my favorite Tarantino movie.
definitely exploitation. But
I think it's just an easy one.
So next week is Death Proof.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino, 2008, 9, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. No, we're not doing Grindhouse. Like, we're not going to do Planet Terror.
It ain't no
either.
double feature, bitch.
I don't like Planet Terror.
I like it, and I would happily do a zombie month and watch Planet Terror. I think it's a laugh riot. I really do.
You know what? I
Because
like
the
it.
humor was baby fuck shit. You know,
Well,
it was great.
baby fuck shit.
Baby fuck
Speaking
shit.
of Nightmare on
Baby
Elm
fuck
Street,
shit.
no, I think
Any kind of fool.
I like
can't
Planet
see.
Terror
Sorry, I'm drunk.
more now than I did when it first came out, when I first watched it. Just because, like, I don't know, I thought it was like the shittier half of the Grindhouse
Really?
thing. Yeah, I don't know. I think I like Tarantino's style more than I do Rodriguez.
I think
that being said,
purely-
From Dusk Till Dawn is still one of my favorite movies.
Oh, absolutely. I think purely just because it was more... I was a lot younger then, but I think it was more horror, overtly horror.
Well, it is.
shall
It's a
we
monster
say.
movie.
It's a monster movie. So, like, I think that was more overtly that, and I think that's why. But, like, now, I kind of agree with you. I like Death Proof more. Not that I think Planet Terror is shit. It's got its own merit in good ways, but I think out of the two, Death Proof is a better film.
It's just one I quote all the time, and it's like, it's one of my, like, oh, I'm cleaning my room, I'll throw it on in the background movies. But, like, it's so funny at the end where, like, they crash the car and he's like, be careful, my arm is broken. It's like, it's so
Zoe
fucking
the fucking cat. I'm okay.
okay, hell yeah. Now, we have a lot of new releases coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we're very excited.
We have a new Evil Dead movie coming up.
Oh my
soon.
god,
That's
that
in
trailer,
April, though.
bitch.
Yeah, she got scalped.
Oh!
Already got scalped.
I love how this is like fully going right back into those horror roots.
We have a new Scream movie coming out.
You
now
are
listen,
practically jizzing for that film.
I'm wearing my Scream t-shirt right now.
Uh-huh.
Now listen, I would
Pussy
like
listen.
to, if we could, perhaps in some way, shape, or form, Get the intermittent Scream movies done before Scream 6 comes out.
What's that, in March?
We only have...
But we already have
No,
something
I don't.
planned for March, darling.
Yeah, but it
It's
comes
in
out at
like
the end of
something
March.
like 40 days.
Okay. Oh, Nathan! I wanted to pick Scream 2, and he literally rolled his eyes.
Well, I'm sorry, but...
I don't give a shit. You could get the fuck out of my house.
Eat my ass.
You don't want to fuck nobody. Get out of my house.
So, yeah, Death Proof.
Okay, cool.
And you've been listening to
They're here.
The Slab.
We're gonna do Scream 2, 3, and 4, like, at some fucking point. If it fucking kills me. This non-continuity shit is doing my head in, because so far all we have is Scream and Scream. Scream and 5 cream.
Make sure to... 5 cream?
Yeah.
I'm a little too drunk for this. Make sure to...
Scream VI. Screevy.
So make sure to like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram for some daily updated content.
And don't fucking kill nobody, unless you absolutely have to.
You know, self-defense, man.
No, look,
Get
like,
it.
if somebody killed my mom, I would kill them. But, like...
Boots.
Yeah, touch wood. Oh,
The house down, yes,
fucking IKEA
God.
furniture.
Touch that wood.